My name is Laura Crawford, and I'll be your presenter for today's session. All right, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can go ahead and type them in the chat window, or you can also type them in the Q&A section of the webinar. I'll be checking that, but when I am in presentation mode, sometimes it is a bit tough to keep up with those questions. So what I typically do is save time at the end. So feel free to type away as you're thinking of those questions. Please don't feel as though I'm ignoring you if I'm waiting to answer those. We usually set aside about 10 minutes towards the end for the Q&A. So happy to do that. Let me see if I can minimize some things over here so that these are not in our way there. Okay, hopefully you can see a nice clear screen now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is Keys to Effective Resource Management. So we've got quite a bit to cover. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about me. My name is Laura Crawford. I'm with PPM Works, and I am a senior PPM specialist. So I do a lot of the configuration, requirement sessions, taking that information, and then configuring the tool so that it supports how you want to use it in your organization there. And then from there, also creating some customized training for your organization, delivering that, as well as any testing, validation, UATs. Happy to help you with all of those things. So please reach out to us. I live, eat, and breathe in the tool. I've been using the tool for over 8 years now. I fill out a timesheet every week. I create my projects in Project Professional and publish them and run reports, etc. So we really, we drink from the well. So, and that then gives us the ability as qualified consultants to really help you with real world scenarios and situations. So we don't just memorize the tool or just take tests to obtain certifications. We actually use it every day to run our business. So please reach out to us if you have any questions after today's training. We would be happy to assist you in any of your needs, if it's training, if it's support, or maybe you want to deploy the tool. You may be joining today so that you can evaluate and see if this tool will support your resource management needs. If you have some questions, hey, give us a shout out. You could always email us at info@ppmworks.com. We would be happy to answer both your questions and also provide a demo. I mean, maybe you see something today that you want to bring to the powers that be at your organization. We would be happy to do that for you. So don't hesitate to reach out and email us. Another thing is reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you. And also you can follow our company and also on LinkedIn, but you also can go to our website and register for our blog. So anytime we do a blog update or send some new information out there, you can receive those subscriptions emailed to you. So happy to help you in any way that we can. All right, so you can see we have quite a bit of information to cover in this next hour. So we're going to jump right in and get started. We're going to talk about non-labor resources first, just covering the different types of resources and how you can use those in the Microsoft PPM tool. We're also going to talk about resource assignments, capacity forecasting, task management within the tool, and time capture and approvals. At the very end, we'll save some time for question and answer. So we're going to take you through from beginning to end to give you an overview of how this tool can support your resource management. All right, there's a lot of functionality in here to cover in a short period of time, but I'll do my best to get that out there. And again, if there's additional information that you'd like from us, just go ahead and email us at info@ppmworks.com. And if you've just joined us, again, my name is Laura Crawford, so I'll be your facilitator for today's session. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about resource types before we get into assigning resource. There are 3 types of resources within Microsoft Project Online. All right, there's work, material, and cost. And then there's also, in addition to those 3 types of resources, you can also create budget resources too for both cost and labor. All right, so work and cost budget resources can also be created. If we have time towards the end, I can give you some additional information on that. But for today, we're going to focus on the work, material, and cost resources. As many of you may know already, work refers to the people or the equipment that is needed to perform the task. Material refers to consumable resources, typically software. In this example, I've given you manuals. So if this was an actual training course that we were sitting down for maybe a one-day training session, manuals would be a consumable resource, right? I pass those out during the training class. I have to replenish that supply before I can teach another training class. Cost resources are typically associated with an invoice. They don't have a built-in rate because you don't typically know what the cost is going to be. So you may have a cost resource for travel or lodging that's built into your project online environment. You can then associate those cost resources to tasks. So if I was going out to implement project online for a customer and I was going out to gather requirements, it may require some overnight stay somewhere, depending upon where that client is located. That would be an example of a cost resource that once I get my travel or my lodging costs together, I then can add that to that resource so that we can track that information directly in our project plans. All right. Okay, so I'm going to actually go ahead and start jumping into the tool in just a moment. We're going to get into assigning resources. I'm going to show you how you can use those three types of resources in your project plan to build the team, then how you can swap out generic resources if you're using those, and then we'll talk about units, how you can adjust the units for each resource when you're assigning them at the task level. All right, but before I jump in, I thought I'd share one more slide with you. Once we've gone ahead and we've created our resources or built our team and made those assignments, then we can take a look at capacity forecasting. So then we're going to go ahead and take a look at what our resources are doing. You know, do we even know if we have the resources to do these projects? We're getting ready to kick off 10 projects. Do we have enough resources to be able to deliver these? Can we meet our deliverables within these projects, or are we going to be delayed in any way? And then how can you track who does what and when? All right, so let's make sure that you have all the tools necessary to be able to do that. All right, let me go ahead and end the slideshow for now, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump into the tool. All right, so I do have Project 2016 open. This is just one of my demo projects that I use in our demo environment, and I've gone ahead and opened this project so that we can go ahead and talk about resource assignments in here. So in projects, let me go to a resource sheet so we can take a look at the resources that I've already loaded here. You may have projects where you're either using a generic resource, which is typically a skill set. It's used as a placeholder. So maybe I don't know who the analyst, the developer, etc. will be for this particular project, but I do know that these are the skill sets that I'm going to need in order to execute the project plan. So you may have projects out there where you start with generics until maybe you've met with a resource manager, and those resource managers have then given you either approved resources that you've requested, or maybe given you the resources that are available and let you know who you can use for your team. Or you could possibly be starting your projects from a template, and those templates should contain generics and not named resources, because you may be using these templates over years and just updating them as needed. But we all know that people change positions, move on, or change their skill set to another, etc. So it is a good idea to use generics in your templates as well. All right, so since I am using Project 2016 and I am connected to my demo environment, so I am actually going to be pulling resources from my enterprise resource pool. The enterprise resource pool is created by administrators. Administrators either sync that with your Active Directory so that all resources from Active Directory are then brought into the enterprise resource pool. All right, so then as a project manager, when I begin to build my team or add resources to a project here, I would be actually doing that from the enterprise resource pool. So I build my team from the enterprise. As a project manager, I don't have the ability to create new resources or edit resource information. I can only select the resources that are already there. So after today's session, if you think, hey, this generic skill set is a great idea, why aren't we doing that? I think I want to create some. You'll have to reach out to your administrators if you're using Project Server or Project Online, and make sure that they create those skill sets for you so that you can then begin to utilize that information. All right, so what you see here is a list of some of the resources in my demo environment. All right, so as you can see here, they're both named resources and generic placeholders that I have in here. And I've gone ahead and I've added some to my project team already. All right, so I also have a mixture of both named and generic so that we can walk through some exercises in here. But if you're coming in here for the first time, you would select a resource and go ahead and add them. You would select OK, and then that resource would then would appear here on a resource sheet. All right, so if you're using Project Standard, you're used to just typing in names here and populating information here on the resource sheet. A little bit different when you're using an enterprise environment. You are now pulling resources from an enterprise resource pool. The beauty of that is that if I pull these folks into my project plan here and I publish this project, their availability is then decremented based on how I'm going to be using them in this particular project. So it gives you the ability to be able to do that in here. All right, so being able to, again, based on that silly Dilbert slide that I had up a moment ago, being able to see who's doing what, all right, and tracking that and being able to forecast availability and capacity. That all starts from here using enterprise resources. All right, so you can see I have some resources in here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to go to just a Gantt chart view. So I can see a list of tasks in my project plan here. All right, and you can see that I do have some assignments already. I was starting from a template, so I did have some generics in here previously assigned to tasks. And now what I can do is I can come in here and from my resource ribbon, I can start assigning resources to tasks in my project plan. And one of the things that I could do is I could swap out my generics from my named resources. So I could say, all right, I need a project manager here. Let me go ahead and replace the project manager with somebody else on my team here. So if Cindy's a project manager, I can go ahead and select Cindy, click OK, and now I have swapped out that generic skill set for a named person here. All right. So the next thing that I also can do, so first I can replace the generics with the named people that I've added to my team here. So I can easily do that. All right. The other thing that I can do as well, and I'm doing this on a task by task basis. I could do that on a for the entire project as well. If I went back to my build team here, let me just show you that real quick. So let me go ahead and close this. And if I wanted to just swap out all the generics right now for a named person, I can do that. So I can come in here, you'll see developer, and then I would select someone from over here. So let me actually, I think Kieran's already on some tasks in here. But if I was to remove Kieran, I can say, let's swap Kieran for the developer. And what it will do is it will go through, and anywhere where Kieran is assigned, he will be replaced. The developer, excuse me, wherever the developer is assigned, we can swap him out for Kieran. So let's see if I can find him since I just threw him back in here. There we go. Come on, Laura. All right. So I can go ahead and replace him, select OK, and now Kieran will be visible anywhere we saw that developer. All right. So that's a quick way to quickly replace generics with the named people on your project plan. And again, I could also come in here to assign resources and then also change the resource assignments from within here. What I like about the assign resources dialog box is that it stays open as you're moving around throughout here. The other thing that I like about it too is it gives me the opportunity to adjust units. So if I come up here and I see my document requirements up here, you'll see that for Laura Crawford, myself, I'm assigned at 100%. All right, so that means that in this project is going to make the assumption that I am available 100% of the time. So 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. And we all know that that's not reality, that many of these resources are working on other projects. They're also working on non-project work as well. You're attending a training session right now or a webinar. So you are being pulled away from your projects that you currently manage. So that's an example of non-project work. So you do want to come in here and adjust this at the task level. All right, and what I mean by task level is this is a task, right? The document's requirement is the task. I'm assigning these individuals to this task, and once I've done that, I can adjust the units. So Cindy's only allocated at 40%, Kieran and I are both allocated at 50%. So project will then schedule us accordingly. We will not be assigned 8 hours a day to work on this task. And then what I could also do is I can also come in here and I can remove the generics from here as well. All right, so if I go ahead and close this, it will go ahead and assign me at 50% here. All right, so we can see Kieran's 50%. All right, and if I expand this, you can see that I am now at 50% as well. I should probably go in real quick and disable, let's see if I can remember where it is, in my options. So if that pop-up drives you crazy, status next to name, get rid of that. All right, so now I shouldn't have, see that pop-up that we were seeing with my name and my status goes away. So that was in file options, if you just saw what I was doing there. File options, display, online status next to name. So now I don't have those pop-ups that are getting in my way. So when we were looking at the assigned resources, if I hovered over any of these, it would tell me whether Kieran was online or offline. But it was also interfering with this background dialog box. So I just turned that off in the background. So if those drive you crazy, now you know how to turn them off. All right, so what I'm doing here, again, is I'm replacing resources or I'm assigning resources to tasks in my project plan. All right, and also adjusting the units in here. I am going to go down for just a moment. I have some training tasks towards the bottom. So let's say I pick this admin training and I go into my assign resource dialog box. You'll see here that I've assigned both myself as the trainer to that particular task, but I also assigned a material resource. All right, I assigned training manuals to this task as well. And instead of putting a percentage of the units, I indicated the number of manuals that I would need. So each of these manuals is associated with a cost. So project then will calculate the material costs for this particular task as well. So the hours that the trainer is working on the task and also those material resources as well. And this is where I went in and adjusted the units for that particular task as well. So if I go to the project manager training task here, I can go ahead and assign myself, and I can also do a control click there to assign the training manuals. Actually, let me go in here and do both of these and then do assign. All right, and now I can come in here and I can adjust the number of manuals that I need. All right, so if I have 5 people in the class, I can go ahead and add 5 manuals. It'll recalculate the material costs along with the work resource as well. Now these costs that are calculating in here, these have been added into our demo environment for demonstration purposes only. They're not real costs that we typically use. So if you're trying to break this down in your head, this is a demo environment. We go in here and change this information around quite a bit. But you can see now there's 2 resources assigned to a task. There's a work resource and there's also a material resource here as well. Now, if I was traveling for this particular project, I could also pull in a cost resource as well. So let me go in here and see if we have a cost resource that I can add. I could also group by, see if I can group it by type. Let me see if I can type in type to get me down here. There we go. Let's see if we can do that. All right, so we have one for overall project budget. I was hoping we had a travel cost resource in here as well, but let's say we could pretend that this is for demonstration purposes. Click on OK. All right, and then for this admin training, I could come back in here again, and I could say overall project. Never mind. This is a that is a budget resource, so that cannot be assigned at the task level. It's actually assigned to the overall project, so we won't be able to do that. But you can do that as well. So you could create a cost resource for travel, lodging, or just a blanket travel one that includes your lodging, your meals, etc. And then you could also assign that third resource to this particular task in your project to account for that as well. All right, so it doesn't just have to be the people resources that are assigned to a task. It also can take into account your costs or also your material resources as well. All right, so assigning the resources. Now, in this particular instance, I did not adjust my allocation down to 50%. And that is because if we're in a training class, we are probably heads down for the full 8 hours in that training class. All right, that's not going to be something that we're going to spread out. Oh, we're not going to take those 8 hours and spread them out over multiple days. All right, so that was left as is. Now, if I go to a resource sheet view, and if I can grab the maximum units over here. Let's just grab this real quick. And let's see if I can get it to move with me. Patience, not my virtue. There we go, finally. All right, you do get this pop-up that edits will not be saved, and that is because these are enterprise resources, and this is a global template that I'm using. So I can change my view all I want, but if I was to try and change any of the resource information in here, both of those changes or edits are not going to be saved. It's for here while I'm in here editing the project. If I save it, if I publish it, close it, and reopen it, the maximum units will be all the way over where it just pulled it over from, and also the units here. So you can see that even though I assign myself to that particular task at 50%, Cindy was assigned that task at 40 and Kieran at 100, we are not, our maximum units here in the resource sheet is still at 100%. And that is because we are enterprise resources. So when an administrator added us to what's called the enterprise resource pool, we were brought in as 100%, which means that we are always available to work on project tasks for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. All right, and unless you adjust that at the assignment level or the task level, you are always going to be, your resources will be overallocated because they're going to be working 8 hours a day on your project and 8 hours a day on tasks and other projects as well. And we all know that there's only 8 hours in a given workday. All right, so you'll want to adjust the units at the task level. If I was to try and do this here, note what happens. It's going to tell me that you can do this for modeling purposes, but you cannot make these changes because this information comes from the enterprise resource pool. All right, so I can click OK, and then I can undo that. I just wanted to show you that. So again, you're not making the changes here on the resource sheet across the board on your project. What you're doing is you're making those changes at the task level here. So when you assign the resource to the task, you're adjusting their units there. All right, so this is all a part of being able to forecast your resource availability, all right, because we want to make sure that our resources aren't overallocated, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But let's say for planning purposes, you don't necessarily have a project schedule already built or even a template that you're working from. You just have a business charter idea that you're submitting, and you want to have an idea of whether you have the resources available out there to do the project as well. You don't have the assignments, so you can't go in here and add the resources and adjust the units, etc. You still can plan or forecast resource availability using something that's called resource assignments, all right? So you actually have the ability to, resource engagements. You can actually create resource engagements for projects, all right? This is only available in Project 2016. All right, so if you have Project 2013, you won't see this resource plan view, and you won't see this new, when you're in the view, well, you wouldn't be able to access the view, so you won't have any of this available. You won't see this resource plan view. All right, this is only available in Project 2016, and what it does is it gives you, the project manager, the ability to reserve or book resources at the project level. So instead of saying, Laura Crawford is assigned to task 1, 2, and 3 from these dates, and this is the total hours that she'll be spending on these tasks, you can say Laura Crawford is going to be needed from 4:18 through 9:30 on this particular project, and I plan to use her at 100% of the time, or I plan to use her at 50% of the time. All right, so you can see, and whoa, something's very skewed in here. It's probably pulling in other projects and commitments as well. All right, so you can, in other words, not do this at the project level. So when you create a resource engagement, the purpose of these engagements, again, is not, the engagement is not concerned with the task level detail, who's doing what, the total number of hours. It is just saying, I need Laura, Jacques, Scott, and Cindy on this project from this date through this date, and I plan on using Cindy for 25% of her time, Scott at 50, Jacques at 25, etc. So that very high level, top down resource planning. So being able to reserve a resource, again, for a given amount of time, and you could either do it in hours or percentage. So you can do either or, whatever makes more sense to your team, to your organization. And the benefit of that is I don't necessarily have a task, a work breakdown structure or a task level detail in my project yet. I just have a project idea, and I just know the people, whether it's a named person or a generic that I need, and how I plan on utilizing them over a given time period. So that is more of a top-down planning approach. When I was assigning resources in the Gantt chart view, that was a bottoms-up approach, where you have a task and you're assigning resources to that task. Either one of those can be used to reserve resources and then be able to forecast availability. All right, so depending upon how you're currently managing projects and how you currently plan your projects, so once you're in your monitoring and controlling or executing, you surely have task level detail in there probably by that point, but early on in the planning stages, you might not have that information. All right, so let me just jump into, I'm going to go into the PowerPoint real quick just so we can talk through a couple of scenarios. Let me switch this around. All right, so our resource utilization calculation scenarios. You can tell project how to calculate whether or not you want it to look at the task level detail that you have in a project plan, or whether you want to look at those resource engagements. All right, so, and why or how you would know when to use one. So if you, scenario one, if you want to perform that top-down planning where you don't have detailed resource assignments or estimates in your project, you're going to use resource engagements. If you, scenario two, if you want to perform bottom-up planning, so that means you have a project schedule built, you have resources assigned to tasks in the project, those tasks are all associated with duration and work, then you can use the project plan. You also have the ability to use a combination, and that is scenario three. You have detailed information for the first few months in a project, so you have your schedule built out, but maybe the scope isn't defined for beyond that time period. So then you can tell the project to use the project plan or the schedule up until a specified date, and then you can switch it. All right, so we call that top-down meets bottom-up resource planning. All right, so you have options. It's not one or the other. Now, where I tell project which one to calculate is here. In my project ribbon, in project information, you'll see that calculate resource utilization from, and you have to change it if you're going to use resource engagements, all right, because it's defaults to project plan. And this is where you do that. You come in here, you make the change from project plan to engagements, you click on OK, and you publish your project. What will happen is if I'm creating these engagement requests and sending them out to the resource manager, I would actually submit these right here from within Project Professional. They get sent to a resource manager for approval. The resource manager can approve, reject, or adjust them as needed. They can swap out the resource you've requested, or they can take a generic and give you the named resource that they know is available. Once they've gone ahead and updated that information, here in the background, you would see that it goes from draft when you're creating it. Once you've submitted it, it goes to propose. And when the resource manager approves it, it then becomes committed. All right, so it's a dialogue between the project manager starting here in Project Professional and the resource manager that is only working in Project Online or in the web. All right, so they are not accessing your project plan. They are just reviewing these requests in the web and either approving, rejecting, or adjusting them as needed. All right, but this is where you change the utilization settings, and we'll see for a moment where these settings come from. I'm actually going to leave mine as is. I'm going to leave mine to calculate from the project schedule because I do have detailed assignment information in here. All right, so I'm going to leave that as is, but what I'd like to show you next is how we can take a look at some of these capacity settings in Project Online to see how this information gets pulled together. All right, so let's go here and let's jump into Project Center. All right, so this is an example of a Project Center view in my Project Online environment. And I'm going to navigate to Resource Center from here. All right, so if I select Resources, in just a moment, we'll see. I don't think I clicked that correctly. Let's see what's going on. All right, so now in Resource Center, we can see that I've gone ahead and grouped this information by type. So we have some cost resources, material resources, and work resources. I've gone ahead and I've selected some resources already because I know that these guys have some assignments out there or they have some engagements that have been committed, so we can see some information. So again, being able to see who's working on what or who is available. Do we have enough resources? If I want to see who's working on what, I would go to Resource Assignments. This is going to show me assignment level detail. So the projects and the tasks that they're assigned to. So it gives me the resource name, their project, and their task. All right. This is only going to show me that bottom up planning though. It's only going to show me assignments. When, if I'm using resource engagements, that's not an assignment. We're not assigning them to tasks in the project plan. Those engagements are related to the project at the project level, but they are not related to assignments. So I did that kind of quickly, so let me back up for a second. What I want to take a look at is capacity. All right, so let me go over here, capacity planning views. All right, now this has been renamed back in 2013, I believe. So if you have Project Server 2013, it'll say capacity planning. In 2010, it had a different name, but you can still access your resource assignments and capacity planning views as well. So I've selected some resources. You have to have resources selected to see some information. And what I've done here is I have a remaining availability view. So I can come in here and I can see if there is availability. This is our demo environment. This is not reality for any of us, unfortunately, because what you see is we have a lot of availability. The remaining availability is a great view. What it normally will display is when resources are over-allocated, they'll fall below the zero line. So the goal is to get as close to zero. Anything above the line represents bench time. Anything below the line represents overallocation. Resources are overcommitted. All right, so this is the remaining availability view, and if I scroll down, I can see resource assignments. Again, this can either come from a engagement. So if I'm using engagements, depending upon when I made that selection in project, from project information, am I telling it to calculate availability and capacity from the project schedule or from the engagement? So this can calculate the information that we're seeing here can be pulled from either or. Previous versions used to have a column letting you know whether it was from what used to be called a resource plan or from project plans. We don't have that any longer. It's that column has been removed. So we're not always sure whether it is an engagement or whether it is a project plan from this view, but it will give you each resource's availability and their capacity. And we can see that, holy hotcakes, we need to book Cindy on some projects because she is wide open and available. All right, we can see that Jock is being utilized on some projects, and thank goodness this is a demo environment because I think we'd be going under because we would have way too much availability in here. But you'd be able to see the projects that are using the resources and the number of hours. I have this broken down by month. All right, so you can see that my time scale is month. You could select 1 month at a time from the date range and then break it down by weeks if you wanted to. You can certainly do that. All right, so I'm just doing this at a higher level by month over the course of a few months here. And I went back to November. If you're planning a new project, you probably want to stick from the beginning of February out to May or something like that so you can see what resources are available. All right, so this is just one of the views. If I go on here, I could also see my resource utilization by project. So now instead of seeing the project, the resource names, I see the projects that are using those resources, and then I can hover over and see each that data information in here. All right, this is your capacity line up here, and you can see it's way above the utilization. So we need to get these resources assigned to projects. But what makes these views good is that very helpful and useful is that if you have a nice view in Resource Center where you have skill sets associated with each resource or a role, you can group the view by role, and then you could select all your developers and go to this view and say, okay, which of those developers has the most availability? And then select that particular person. All right, so it gives you the opportunity to do all that. All right, so let's go ahead and then I'll show you one more view just real quick. There's also a capacity and engagements heat map. This is only going to make sense if you're using engagements. If you're not using engagements, you're not going to see that information. Everybody's blue because we're all very underutilized. But if you were submitting engagement requests, you can see discrepancies between capacity and committed engagement. So if we're committing resources to projects above their capacity rate, you'd see some red cells in here and also some green that indicates everyone's appropriately assigned. All right, so your resource capacity views from Resource Center is where you're going to be able to compare availability and capacity for your resources. All right, so the tool gives you a ton of information or a ton of level information in here where you can make intelligent decisions even before you switch out the resources in your project. So if you are going to swap out the generics for a named resource, I usually tell people in training, good idea to go to Resource Center, select your resources that you want to use on your project, and check out their remaining availability before you even assign them to tasks in your project. Make sure that they are available. All right, now we all know what happens when they're not. So let me go back to a Gantt chart view. We can start here. You'll see these, I call them the red angry men, right? The stick figures that start appearing. This is going to let you know that you have resources that are overallocated. If I go to a resource sheet view, all the red also lets me know that these resources are overallocated. All right, and it might not be because of my scheduling. again, remember, these are enterprise resources. This is an enterprise tool. So it's going to let you know that this resource is overallocated. I may have only assigned Kieran to work on this task for 2 hours a day, which is way under his 8-hour a day capacity, but there might be 10 other projects that are doing the same. All right, so that's again going to be helpful there. Now, if I right click on the red angry man, you'll see that I can fix in the engagement inspector, or I also could, if I wanted to, inspect the task. So I can come in here and look at this inspector, and it's going to tell me a whole bunch of information. All right, so some of these resources are also assigned to non-working time, so maybe over the weekend or a holiday. It also is going to tell me, give me some options on how I can fix this. So I can go view it, engagement request, or I can also look and see or move a task to when the resource is available. All right, so right-clicking in here, and if I select a different task, it'll change the information and give me other suggestions if the information changes in here. It could be, anything that's relating to this task. This will stay open the entire time. So that is your inspector. This is also available here. You'll see inspect. If we come in here, it'll inspect the task here as well. So from the task ribbon, I can select that. But I always say when in doubt, right click and you get that really short menu of commands, and it's just a little bit of a shortcut that I use. But you can certainly go here. All right, so once you've identified all these overallocated resources, you also should be looking at your critical path in your project. All right, so you can see I have a lot of overallocation, so I'm going to be in trouble in this project. All right, and then I would probably want to go to a couple of different views. Real quick, we covered this in last week's webinar. May look at a network diagram view. I also could look at a tracking Gantt view just to see some views and just to see which tasks are on the critical path and if my overallocated resources are on those critical tasks. Because if they are, then I really need to get in here and start making some adjustments. So I could use that view that I just showed you in Resource Center to see if there's other resources with more availability, and then I could swap out my resources. All right, so being able to identify the resources in your projects that are overallocated, being able to monitor or view your critical path to see if they're on the critical path, and then from there, making those adjustments. All right, so the tool gives you all this information. All right, so really helpful and fabulous. All right, so being able to book resources either at the project level using engagements, being able to book resources using task assignments. All right, so those are two completely different options that you can use to reserve resources in your enterprise resource pool. And then being able to go to Resource Center, go to your capacity planning views, and see that information presented in different views so that you can make the best decisions on which resources to use. All right, so one last thing we'll cover, and then we'll take it from there for questions, because I don't see any Q&A in there just yet, so I don't think anybody's typed in some questions, but we'll save some time at the end, just in case. All right, so from here, again, we can change these different views. We can change the time scale if we needed to. But the last thing I wanted to show you is also taking into account updates, and you're updating projects through either a task page or a timesheet. I'll show you what the task page looks like. I have a timesheet open as well on my other tab, so I can toggle back to that one. But depending upon your tracking method that you're using in your organization, if you're used to marking tasks as percent complete, 25, 50, 75, 100, then you're probably going to want to use the task page. The task page gives you that opportunity. So I could, depending upon configuration, either enter the actual hours on a time phase grid, but if you're using a task page, you're using it because you want to update the percent complete for tasks here. All right, I'm actually have my system configured to use timesheets, so that's why you'll see a 12% or a 51%. It's looking at the actual hours that have been logged against these tasks and calculating the percent complete. All right, but you would, otherwise, team members would come in here and mark this as 25, 50% complete and submit that to you. Both the task page and the timesheet are pre-populated based on those published projects. So if you have task assignments in a project and you publish your project, that information will appear in a timesheet. All the current task assignments, as well as any tasks that you were supposed to have completed in the past, will still remain on your timesheet. Your task page is also pre-populated with your current task assignments, either tasks that were supposed to have been completed in the past that you haven't finished just yet, and also those tasks that you're currently assigned to for this week. And then you also can even peek ahead to the near future planning window, which is usually 2 weeks out. All right, so from in here, I can come in here and let's see, I have this project open. So I can come in here and I can say, I've spent these hours on this particular task in the project. I can save this. And I can also submit this when I'm done. So instead of your team members meeting with you on a weekly basis in a meeting and telling you their task updates, they fill out their timesheet or they fill out their task page. And then what happens is this information goes to whoever's responsible for updating or approving those tasks, which is typically the project manager that owns the project. So you'll see that I just submitted those 2 tasks in here for approval by entering them on my timesheet, saving it, and submitting my timesheet. So now as the project manager, I can come in here and I can accept, reject. I can also preview the updates in a project online in the web. It'll open up another, so I can select these and preview and show you what that looks like. It opens up a new window and it shows me if you accept these task updates, how is it going to impact your current project schedule? And the project schedule will load here and it'll do some highlighting to let me know what will happen. All right, so I only see the 2 tasks right here. I don't see any change highlighting in here. So I don't think that's really going to impact anything. Except, let me stop for a second. It will. It's actually going to push everything out. Yes, because this is all in yellow. So my previous start was 1, 2, but if I go ahead and submit my timesheet, you'll see that I must have submitted a task update on the 12th. So this task started a week late. So a month late, over a month late. And you can see the previous finish and now what the new finish is. So we can see how this particular project is going to slip. All right. So if you are using the approvals page here, you can preview updates before you accept them. All right. So you can see the total number of hours that have been submitted against these tasks, and you can see whether or not those approvals will impact your project plan. And again, I could accept or reject from here. If I choose to accept, it'll confirm my approval. And I have my project checked out right now, so I would have to check it in because the next step would be to actually publish them. So I can publish the approvals to my project plan, and it won't let me right now. It'll show it as grayed out because the project is in checked out and edit mode. But if I come over here and quickly check this project in, I'm not going to see my project is there. Let's go ahead and see. Here we go. We could give it a second and we should be able to publish it. And what ends up happening is the project then, these updates then get pulled into my project schedule. So I will see actual work accumulating against those tasks. Either if I'm using a task page, it would be a percent complete will be updated. If I'm using a timesheet, I'd see the actual hours on the day that the resource worked on those tasks. And that information will be directly pulled into my project plan. All right, so the tool helps you with a number of areas, right? So being able to pull your team or build your team from the enterprise resource pool, being able to use work resources, material resources, and cost resources, being able to edit your assignment units for each task so that resources are not overallocated in your project plan, being able to monitor within project whether or not resources are overallocated with the stick figures. All right, so being able to do all that from in here. And then also being able to check the critical path, monitor that to see if the overallocated resources are assigned to tasks on the critical path, being able to then adjust and modify your project. All right, so when we're tracking resource utilization, we have some options here. So we can calculate it from the project schedule, or we can calculate it from the resource engagements, either or. All right, so it's not all or nothing. You may have projects where you're using engagements, and you may have projects where you have detailed schedules and you prefer to calculate from your project plan. All right, you can select on a project to project basis how you'd like to do that. And then being able to go to your resource center to take a look at your capacity views. All right, so look at those views to see which resources have bench time and which resources are under allocated. All right, and then being able to accept task updates directly from a timesheet or a task page. And once you've accepted those updates, publish those directly into your project plan. Let me just go into here one moment, and we're going to wrap it up in just a moment so that we can answer some questions. I wanted to also remind you as well that if you have any questions after today, you can email us at info@ppmworks.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. If you want a copy of our recording, you can request that from there as well. We also have a resource engagement toolkit, so if you're interested in more information on that, we can send that out to you. Don't forget to link in with us. You can follow our company or link in with me individually. Love to hear from you. All right, so, and also go back to our website to see any additional upcoming webinars.